Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate?
Yes!
Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need, get over the fear, and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello, everybody. Michael Quarles with podcast number 26. Another day of answering 5 questions from you folks. Now, remember, in order to get your question answered, please email it to support@bsffacademy.com. One more time. That is support@bsffacademy.com. And we will answer your real estate question. Here's today's first question. Question number 1. How important is having an office or professional business address? If you do not have one, is that a problem? It's not a problem at all. It's absolutely much more convenient to have one, but it's not a problem at all. But here's what we want to make sure we don't do. We never want to put our home address on any correspondence, on our business cards or on our mail pieces or anything like that. The only thing that is good to put our home address on is maybe closing instructions where you're going to receive those fat checks from buying and selling property. But other than that, do not use your home address. The easiest address to use if you don't have a location would be like a UPS store or a Gone Postal store or something to that effect where they have these little itty-bitty mailboxes in there, and you can use their physical address and that box number as your address. Even some post offices are now allowing you to use their physical address and the P.O. box number. Instead of saying P.O. box, you can say 1000 Pegasus Drive kind of thing, and then the box number. But here's a cool way to do it, and it's not that expensive. So think about it this way. Instead of going down to UPS and getting one of their little mailbox things for $30 or $40, whatever they cost, look for an executive office company. And what they do is they actually rent rooms. Now, I'm not suggesting in the beginning you want to rent a room, but what they'll allow you to do is through their service, they will collect your mail. They're your storefront. So if you have someone, say you have a seller and you need to meet them at a professional location, you can use their location to meet the seller. They will greet your seller. They will ask your seller to sit, get them coffee, get them water, that kind of thing. And you'll be able to use one of the unrented offices or conference rooms. So to your seller, you're going to look highly professional. It's hardly anything from an expense perspective. They're going to have copy machines there. They're going to have phones there. They're going to have a notary public there. So if you have to get a memorandum of contract signed, they'll actually be able to do that. And it looks super, super, super professional. And then when you decide that you actually need an office, then rent one of their little offices, little 12 by 12. They come with their own desk, their own phone service. So you don't have to pay a lot of money to look highly impressive and professional. It will go a long, long, long way. Great question. Question number 2. If sub-2 or seller financing is necessary for an investor deal, when do they decide in which to use? Well, here's the thing. You always decide in the very beginning. I'm going out to the house to buy it. My appointment's at 2 o'clock. I have already decided that I'm going to buy that property subject to the existing loan if there is any. There's no reason to pay it off. I've already decided it. I know the objection handlers. I know how to communicate it. It's part of my agreement that I can go over and use with my seller. And I also know that if I'm going to get subject to and I'm going to get seller financing because that's how I buy houses. Now, naturally, I can buy a lot of houses with cash, but I don't want to use my cash. I want to go there with the mind frame that I'm doing subject to seller financing. Subject to and seller financing together. So say I'm going out to a house that is worth $200,000. I'm going to buy it for $130,000. There's a $100,000 Bank of America note. The seller wants $30,000. He's going to do a a second note. He's not going to do a wrap. I'm not going to let the seller wrap the first primary note. I'm only going to let him be in second position. The reason for that is I want to be able to pay him off if something goes sideways. If it was a wrap, in order to pay him off, I'd have to pay him all of the money. This way, I only have to pay him the $30. So I'm going to buy the house subject to the existing loan of $100. I'm going to start making the mortgage payments on it. And he's going to do a seller carryback. I'm going to amortize it over a 15-year period. I'm going to make him a monthly payment. I'm going to pay him off fast. I mean, all I'm doing is I'm buying the house and I'm going to flip it. So although it's for 15 years, we can no longer do the balloon notes anymore. So we're going to do a 15-year mortgage. I'm going to pay him off just as soon as I sell the house. And I'm also going to pay off that original sub-2 loan that I'm taking when I sell the house. And here's another thing. Sub-2 just doesn't mean the mortgage. It could be anything on the property. So all involuntary and voluntary liens. So voluntary liens are like the loans, the notes, something that someone's agreed to, the credit lines, those kinds of things. Involuntary liens could be mechanics liens, child support liens, any IRS lien or state tax lien, any liens that is against the person and it actually attaches to the property. I am not going to even pay off property taxes. If there are property taxes that are owed, if they're less than 5 years owed, I don't have a worry because I know I'm going to sell the house pretty fast. Now, if they're close to 5 years, I'm going to pay off enough of the tax to get it under the 4-year rate. I'm not going to own the house for a year, so I don't have a problem with it. But you can buy a house subject to all of the involuntary and voluntary liens, and you absolutely should. And there's benefit to the seller on selling you their house subject to the existing loan. It's the fastest and most easiest way to get a house sold, and that's what sellers want. So let's take advantage of that opportunity. Question number 3. Do you bring a notary with you when you buy the house, or do you have a traveling notary come out to the seller's house afterwards? I actually meet them down at the closing company the next day. So when I'm out there buying the house, we enter into the agreement. I make an appointment for them to meet me at closing tomorrow at 10 o'clock, and I make sure that they bring a current driver's license or ID card with their name, and I tell them that we're going to open up escrow, and we're going to sign what we call a memorandum of contract, which is laid out in my agreement to purchase. And I'm going to tell them that agreement tells the world that I'm buying the house and they're selling me the house. And we're going to start that process tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'm going to give them a business card of my closing company with the address on it and who we're going to meet. And we're just going to use one of their little conference rooms. It takes all of 10 minutes. It's highly professional. I'm going to use the professionalism of that infrastructure, and it's going to go really cool. Question number 4. Here's a scenario question. I love scenario questions. Can sub-2 owner financing work with pretty houses where you buy at 85 to 90% of the as-is value and sell to an end buyer with bad credit at 105% of value? Can you talk about this as a good model or something that would work? It seems you could buy a lot of houses at those values without a lot of competition. Well, here's the deal, folks. And yes, you can absolutely buy a lot of houses at 85 to 90% of value and resell them to somebody at 105% value who maybe has poor credit. But here's the real deal here. I'm not saying you can't do it, but you have to ask yourself, do you want to do it? So here's what I'm doing. I'm out there marketing. My marketing dollar costs me the same whether I send it to an investor who has high equity in a property or an investor who has low equity in a property. So it costs me the same. The letters are the same. If I go out and make a presentation and I buy a house at 70 cents on the dollar or with 30% equity, or I go out and buy a house that has maybe 10% equity, 15% equity, which one is better for me? Now, I like massive amounts of money. I mean, I don't like the little wimpy passive stuff. I understand why people are passive income investors. I get it. Totally get it. Wrote a book about it. Totally get it. I just don't do it. I think it's better to make 50 grand on a house than it is to make $50 a month on a house. I think one's better. And then the other question you have to ask yourself is, because there is a due on sell clause, the lender has the right, it's Article 17 of the note, that if they determine that a transfer has taken place, and that doesn't even have to be constructive notice transfer, it could be just a lease option transfer, that they have the right to call the note. So they have the right to notice the property owner that they know that happened. They're going to give you a 30-day notice, and then they're going to start the foreclosure proceeding. Well, that foreclosure proceeding is going to negatively impact the borrower's credit or the seller that you bought the property from, unless you concur it. So cure the loan. So yeah, if you have, let's just call it for easy numbers, if you have a $100,000 valued property that has an $85,000 loan on it subject to, and you have $85,000 sitting at Bank of America, that if the loan were called, that you could take your $85,000 and go pay off that loan, I'd do that all day long. You absolutely can. Now, I wouldn't do it because I think that's a flawed business model, but you could. But what you don't want to do is get yourself in a situation where you're putting everybody at risk. You're putting your buyer at risk because now they have a house that's going to be foreclosed upon because of the due on sell. You have a seller whose credit is being harmed because you're not curing the loan. Your reputation is harmed, and I don't care how many disclosures you get everybody to sign that you have the legal right to do all this stuff. You have to ask yourself, are you doing the ethical and the moral thing by doing it? But absolutely you can do it. I would much rather you make sure that you have the capital resources available to take down the subject to, which is why I like buying subject to that are under 70 cents on the dollar of the value of the property, because I know, well, one, I can buy the house, but I know if I couldn't, I could go to an equity lender and I can get a really large loan and get that thing wiped away. Besides that, I'm only going to keep the house for a week or two, and it's going to be extinguished when I resell the property. So I like my model. I don't want to sit out there and own front doors and worry about someone making their mortgage payment. And if they don't make their mortgage payment to me, how do I make the mortgage payment so I protect the seller that sold it to me, their credit? I mean, what do I do there? I mean, there's all kinds of reasons you probably wouldn't want to do it this way. But you can absolutely do it this way, and there's a lot of people out there preaching that this is the way to do it. I'm just not one of them. But it was a great scenario question. You guys bring on some more. Question number 5. Mr. Investor lost a deal on a house that was going through foreclosure to another investor. Is this normal, or is there anything different that we can add to the seller presentation in situations where the house is going through foreclosure? Boy, let me read this again. Mr. Investor lost a deal on a house that was going through foreclosure to another investor. Okay. I'm only thinking maybe they lost the house because another investor bought it. But I'm going to read some more. Is this normal, or is there anything different that can be added to the seller presentation in situations where the house is going through foreclosure? Well, if I'm going to read this to say that another investor stepped in and bought the house out from underneath the first investor, the thing that you would want to do is always get a memorandum of contract signed. So on this question, I'm not sure what they're actually asking. Maybe next time I get this one, we'll follow up with the investor who asked it, and we'll have better understanding of it. I apologize. But always get a memorandum of contract signed. Now, I never record mine. I have the right to record it. It's been signed by the notary public, so I have a right to take it down to my county recorder's office and do it. The only times that I actually get them recorded is when I fear that the seller is going to go sideways on me, because some of these sellers, they're really crazy people. So if I think or getting hints of that, I go down and record it. Now, to remove a memorandum of contract, you just sign a quitclaim deed back to the owner. So it's really easy to remove them, but make sure you have them. You cannot get one after they decided to not sell to you. So here you are, you're going to make $60,000, $70,000 on a house. You're all excited, and 3 weeks the escrow is going to close, and in 2 weeks the seller stops returning your phone calls, and you think something's wrong. So you call them, and they say, well, we're going to sell it to somebody else. Well, if you had a memorandum of contract, you can go down and record that thing and stop that from happening and fall forward. Be responsible. Just remember, we got to keep people in the game. And so that's what a strong contract's for. And that's why we make sure we follow certain rules and guidelines. And in fact, in my contract, they actually agree, when they agree to my contract, get this, that if they back out of selling me the house, they have to give me $50,000 or 25% of the contracted sales price, whichever is greater. And they sign that as liquidated damages. So I don't even have to prove my position. They've given me my position in advance that I'm going to get a minimum of $50,000 and possibly more based upon the purchase price and the agreement. That has kept people in the game when they started going sideways. Why do we have to have those kinds of clauses in our contracts? Because we deal with all kinds of folks. They're not the most honest sometimes. So, and you know what I'm talking about. So make sure you're protected and get it signed by everybody. Don't be ashamed of your contract, that it's so sometimes a little bit forceful, because you have to be forceful. Some of these people act like little children. You just need to make sure that you can keep them in line. Most of them are great people and they're honorable people, and we'll be doing more business with them from referrals. But some of them we have to protect ourselves. So get the stuff signed. I appreciate the opportunity to answer you guys' questions on a daily basis. We're going to do this again coming Monday, so I'm going to take Saturday and Sunday off. You guys do that too. And remember, if you're interested in my coaching program, go to bsffacademy.com, look around, see what's included. There's a lot of material that we discuss over the year. I work one-on-one with you through marketing and negotiation and presentation and buying subject to and seller financing and reselling it for the maximum amount and systemizing your business. We work together. We set you up as a powerhouse real estate investor, whether you have no experience at all or if you've bought houses many times before. I work with both people. Look at the program. If it's interesting to you, fill out the form and I'll contact you and we'll get you going. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.